Money in the Bank as a ladder match and an event in the past has often delivered us some very memorable moments and great pay-per-view events. 2018's edition has the unenviable task of living up to NXT TakeOver the night before, but was it worth sitting through the new 4-hour long-form format? Well, let's analyse this thing and see where the matches ended up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a pay-per-view review edition of Wrestling Rant. Things kicked off on this pay-per-view with a pre-show match that I don't analyse for those of you who are new to this show, as the Bludgeon Brothers beat the Good Brothers in a solid but not that spectacular match. It was on the pre-show, so I would honestly believe it would never set the world on fire, would it? As the whole event itself kicked off in what was quite surprising fashion, as Daniel Bryan defeated Big Cass in 16 minutes and 20 seconds, in a match that I thought was actually going to be as mediocre and poor as, honestly, the match they had at Backlash was. But I'm giving this one a match of the night stamp of approval with a 3.25 star rating. I know it sounds insane to think. And the fact is, it always sounds damn difficult to say that the best match of the night is the first one, because that means, as per usual, every match that comes after it is a small downward slope to oblivion. Thankfully, most of this card managed to not have that happen to itself, and it managed to better the quick and straightforward yet somewhat lackluster Backlash match 2 months ago, as it gave Cass some offense, which really highlighted his domineering big man power play, and thanks to the psychology of working on Cass's leg, Bryan's desire for revenge was as heartfelt and incredibly intense as it could be, allowing excitement and storytelling to flow through this like a river through a gorge. It was stunning. However, I will say, it was helped even better by the white-hot crowd. The decision to put Dan O'Brien on first ensured that this felt electric, and inevitably allowed the pace to ramp up and allow the 16 minutes to fly by without a care in the world, while some really nice near falls played into the drama spectacularly. Now, obviously, there was some lacking of selling by Cass, which enabled it to not feel as well-rounded, but it was unpredictable and inevitably came through with a really nice punch to ensure that the match that happened 2 months ago is a very distant memory that showed when the right amount of enthusiasm and the right crowd is in, even the poorest match on paper in retrospect can look great. It wasn't the be-all or end-all, and there wasn't as many moves as I would have expected from these two to really jazz it up a bit to make it even more exciting, but for what we got here, a 3.25 star to kick off the night was a very good thing to see. However, we move on to a match now that was pretty poor, as Bobby Lashley predictably beat Sami Zayn in what was, for this show, quite a very short runtime indeed, of 6 minutes and 35 seconds, off of 3 standing, stalling, vertical suplexes. Yeah, that's gonna induce the vertigo in Sami, but not much else, as the match kind of fell as damp flannel more than anything else. It's a 1/2 star contest, because considering that Lashley was slowly and surely putting Zayn down with about as much enthusiasm as me during a match later on this evening, which I will get to, inevitably it ended the worst feud of the year thus far with about as much pomp and ceremony as you would honestly expect. And there was very little intensity to go along with such a personal rivalry. It didn't bloody feel like it, and it showed in the quality of this contest. And the fact it didn't get a rousing reception makes even more sense, considering Chicago don't like Bobby Lashley at the best of times, considering his very poor characterization since returning to WWE outright. It was somewhat enjoyable, though, as the tempo of the bout fluctuated to accommodate both men's styles, as Zayn ran around trying to give Lashley a really annoying chase around, and then Lashley's big power offense working that vertigo into the story was pleasant enough. And it had little bits that made me go, you know what, if they just up the tempo even more so, add some violence in here, it'll actually be very good. Unfortunately, it never went anywhere else, and as a result, it just turned into a performance that replicated the fan response thusly. They sat on their hands, they didn't really care, And as I always say, if the fans don't care watching a contest, then why the blue hell should I? The contest had little tiny pieces that could have made me smile if they were elaborated on and made a much more winding and twisting part of the narrative, and Sammy's heel work could have been easily put in to make Lashley even more incensed, but once again he came out smiling and he left smiling. And, of course, he performed his moves while smiling, which means inevitably I don't think I can trust this guy if I ever committed murder around him, because he, potentially, according to this character, would not want to hurt me. Ridiculous as that may sound. Half a star, and considering the wrestlers involved, I should have expected a better match, but knowing the storyline that was built around it, maybe I was a bit too optimistic. That being said, it got what it bloody deserved, and we have to move on to something a bit more appetizing. Oh yes, Seth Rollins defeating Elias to retain the Intercontinental Championship over what was quite a hard-fought bout after 17 minutes exactly. Now this contest was a 2.5-star match. Now I'm not going to deny, as many will note, that this is a very fun match to watch, but it took a lot of time to reach it. Because, okay, it got there gradually, increased in intensity, and escalated as both men took risks and showed their athleticism and drive very well. That's great for the story, and in fact that was the best thing in this match, as they worked over each other, and Seth Rollins' body, from the back to the legs to the neck, were all hit with moves and sold beautifully. It told a fantastic story that showed Elias is bloody dangerous. Even though Seth had to cheat to win, he got pushed to the limit, and that definitely made it worth its time. But the fact is, it went on longer than I anticipated, but that's not a bad thing. The bad thing was that the chemistry early on between these two men was jarring and clunky. Inevitably, it meant that the crowd weren't too sure what was happening. It started off very slow and methodical, and surprisingly anticlimactic considering the Seth Rollins matches we normally see weekly on Raw and on pay-per-views. So a lot of the fans were just sitting on their hands, just biding their time, waiting for it to really start to click. And when Elias went ballistic and started showing his intensity and aggression on full display rather than being restrained by the incredible mat prowess of one Seth Rollins, it managed to come alive, the audience sprang out of their seats, and it created a match that was much more than it honestly was on paper, and it actually delivered more than a more personal feud would have, as I've already noted. The fact is, okay, the psychology made this match. The psychology and storytelling put this on a pedestal where it could hold its head high and be proud. Unfortunately, I felt that with the pace being slower than it should have been in places, and the crowd not being as loud for its duration, and some of the moves not even really making me sing and dance alive, inevitably the match disappointed on a lot of areas, but it made up for that and ensured that it was an average and fun-ish contest to sit through, which is a good thing, because if it lasts 17 minutes and doesn't manage to keep your attention, then that's a bad thing. But I will say this, for about 11 minutes of this contest, I was smiling happily. Inevitably, I wanted more, but what we got here was pretty good. It was acceptable and well worth the time invested, so the good thing is that Rollins and Elias can further this down the line, especially if Rollins had to cheat for it. So there is a potential for this to get even better. And if this is the sample for what we could see from these two in the future, I'm fine with it. It's all good to see. Following on from those opening 3 contests, we had ourselves the first eponymous match of the evening. The women's Money in the Bank ladder match that surprisingly, against all logic and a lot of people's predictions, saw Alexa Bliss come out on top after 18 minutes and 30 seconds of very entertaining action that generated a 3.25 star rating from me. Yes, the same as Brian and Cass, but I felt there was just a little more to that to put it over the line. That being said, the women turned up and gave us a very entertaining ladder match that definitely surpassed its predecessors, because the first women's Money in the Bank ladder matches last year had a serious feeling of nervousness around them, that there was apprehension around how it was going to be perceived and what could be done, and inevitably there was a distinct lack of risks around the match itself, which meant that it was very unsatisfying. I gave the one on the pay-per-view at least a 1.25 star. I really didn't enjoy it at all, despite some glimmering moments of goodwill to be found. The fact is, this time, there is no first time ever historic tag on it, as these women put all on the line to ensure we got something quite entertaining. And well, There was creative moves, insane spots, and some tension in storyline for friendships and rivalries of the past coming together and to really make this somewhat exciting, primarily from Becky and Charlotte. Oh, the tension. Charlotte and Sasha as well. The tension was unbridled and quite fantastic. And overall, the new combatants like Ember Moon and Lana coming through really added some flavour to the contest and got the crowd on their feet. And my god, there were so many good moves in here, but that being said, there's too many to list here, but if you rewatch the match, you'll know what I mean, because that's the reason why the move variety rating on my scale scored a 3.5, a rating it rarely ever gets. But because these women have rarely ever done moves like this, they're fresh, they're new, they're exciting, and that's why it helps. It's all well and good. And every single woman in here got a chance to showcase themselves, whether they're doing spots, jumps off of ladders, or anything in between, getting monstrous pops for the most part. Especially Lana, hitting an accolade. She rarely got a chance to shine in this, but when she did, she took it and had the crowd in the palms of her hands. And this match, despite the fact it was women wrestling where some people think they can't take the punishment, they bloody took it here, as the crowd were lapping it up and enjoying almost every damn second of it, I will say. And the thing is, there was not as much storytelling as I would have liked, because the feuds that these women were having were not really well constructed beforehand, and a lack of Bayley around Sasha Banks really was a missed opportunity there, and the Riot Squad could have also interfered too, but you see my problem there. But honestly, this match succeeded regardless of that, and gave us a long, intense, and very well wrestled contest that threw some surprises in places we wouldn't have expected. Just a bit of fine tweaking and it could have rose up even higher than what it already had. But then again, Alexa Bliss won it and I wasn't the happiest ever despite the quality that was put on before me. But by the end of the night, I will be singing this result's praises, and of course if you've seen the pay-per-view you know exactly how that goes. If not, you may be in for a little bit of a shock. If you end up watching it later on tonight, of course. Or any time in the future, for that matter, if you weren't around for it. Now, this is where the event slightly goes downhill. Oh yes, it does, because Roman Reigns defeated Jinder Mahal in a 15-minute, 40-second contest that, honestly, in most other places would have probably done okay. Here we go in Chicago though, and it just went downhill almost instantaneously as I gave it a 0. Now that may be a bit harsh, but the crowd basically signed this match's death warrant before anything could really happen. They were booing them, chanting that they suck, doing a Mexican wave, doing every single non-match relevant chant you can think of, throwing beach balls around. I mean, most of the match, the crowd were looking sideways. They weren't even bothering to actually look at the match, and inevitably, as I've said before, if the fans do not care, then why the hell should I? But then again, this isn't all the fans' fault, because Reigns and Mahal did exactly what their match scripting notes told them to do. And that made the match, with the crowd reaction, flat, mundane, and pedestrian. There was nothing really outstanding outside of the Sing wheelchair interference that slightly sprouted the crowd into some form of life, but apart from that it was a run-of-the-mill Roman Reigns match where he was beaten down to the point ad nauseum where he would come up and get a reprisal from it. Revival, reprisal, it all works in either way. The fact is, the match was so underwhelming in its construction that there was no creativity to make it better. With a crowd that was actively against it, why didn't these two get told by anyone, the referee, the production team in the back, to do something different, to get them on their feet, to actually care? Because the beauty of a Roman Reigns contest is if it manages to do better than expected, the fans are going to cheer. You just need to show some creativity and some liveliness to make it work. But this match was put in the same boat as many Mahal matches are, where he works a guy on the ground for ages, and then the revival against him is so overpowering that it doesn't really feel natural. And you combine the worst aspects of a bad Roman Reigns and a bad Jinder Mahal match with a crowd that didn't care, and you get a match here that, despite the intensity going into it, was really nothing at all. The match didn't benefit anybody, it had no real purpose, and as a result it makes you question what the hell is going to happen to both these men into the next month. You got Extreme Rules coming up, and of course there's SummerSlam. I mean, the match on any other night with just a few tweaks would have been worth the time. But here, in this place, with this execution, it came through extremely poorly, to where, as a contest, you could just sit back and not really look at it, because there wasn't much of a point to it. And that's pretty bad for me to say about a Roman Reigns match in 2018, because I like Roman. I really do. He's a good in-ring performer with the right amount of substance behind him. And Jinder Mahal, given the right program, has actually got some ability to show. Look at his matches with Jeff Hardy, Seth Rollins and others in the last few months to prove it. He's got some talent in there. But just like Roman, he needs the right booking, the right amount of creativity, the right amount of good ideas. And this match could have taken some good ideas to make it exciting. But it wasn't, and what you got here was a match that was tantamount to an empty jug. I'd rather drink something out of that than just stare at what the hell I managed to get out of it. That being said, many people expected this to be the worst match on the night, and I honestly had potential for it to maybe exceed those expectations, but here we are. It's the first 0 I've given out on pay-per-view this year, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not that happy about it. What I'm also not happy about was the SmackDown Women's Championship match as Carmella defeated Asuka. Now, the reason why that's the case isn't because Carmella did manage to beat Asuka, because I kind of predicted it. It's not how that happened either, but the whole match that preceded it. The whole 11-minute and 10-second contest that I gave half a star to. Because the finish of Ellsworth returning to assist Carmella on the anniversary of the event where he helped her ascend to where she is now. I liked that. That was very good. That was entertaining. I liked that. The build-up to it with Asuka being scared by the reflection of her own mask, which has some story implications further down the line. That's interesting. I like it. But it's everything else that came before that that really sticks in my craw, because you have Carmella, a wrestler who is portrayed as a cowardly yet resourceful heel, right? The resourcefulness in the finish is warranted. The cowardly aspect of the early part of the contest where Asuka had dominance, that works out fine if that's the story you're trying to tell. So if you had Asuka dominating for most of the contest, you would have had a surefire winner for story, for momentum, for pace, and the crowd would have been interested watching Carmella get her face kicked in. That's exactly what I was expecting this match to be. But what it was something different, because how can you have a cowardly yet resourceful champion being a heel if she spends most of the match dominating? The finish then makes no sense, because she had it in the bag many times, wearing down Asuka every chance she got, in mat based in the ring, with good strikes and aggression and taunting. It was all there. So why did Carmella need that cheating finish? You see, if Carmella was being beaten down within an inch of her life to where that was what was needed to get her to escape the win, barely from the grasp of Asuka, that's what's needed. But the contest was arranged, executed and booked in a way that meant it all was for nothing. The entire contest made no sense based on the framework that it had been put in, all because they want to show Carmella as a strong, fighting and decent wrestler as well as a champion. They want to show people that this skinny person from Staten Island, who isn't looking like the most biggest embodiment of wrestling greatness, can pull it off against a skilled striker and submission specialist. That happened against Charlotte last time out, and I gave it a 1/4 star. The ability to inject a little bit of storytelling made this a little bit more palatable, but once again, they did something that really isn't in Carmella's character to make her look good. You can do that, but only when you've started to put in the aspects of her character and story into the match. You can do that over time and then show, after the confidence builds, that she can then take people down once she had a few months with the title on her back. The way this match was put together really annoys me, and this match could have been a sleeper hit if executed properly, but instead what we have here is a 1/2 star contest that does quite literally nothing outside of showcase that James Ellsworth is back, and that's somewhat okay. And of course that Asuka could be afraid of the mask that she carries. Again, foreboding, foreshadowing, storytelling potentially could pay off here. As for Carmella, I'm hoping she goes into a contest with Asuka next time where she actually plays up her role well. Or maybe includes the Iconics as well. But you see what I mean? You add those elements, you play to the character's strengths, you create a better contest. If you don't, you get this. And that isn't a good thing in the slightest. And you know what? That's not the angriest I'm going to be, because the most disappointing moments of this entire evening has finally arrived. AJ Styles defeating Shinsuke Nakamura in a last man standing match that went, as long as I expected it to, 31 minutes and 15 seconds, the longest contest on the evening. But for me, the most disappointing, I gave it 1 3/4 stars, ladies and gentlemen. It's roundabout as good as where I believe the WrestleMania match is, and it's nowhere, it's just under where the rest of their contests are, because to say I'm disappointed by this is an understatement, because how can a 30-minute match between two of the best in the world right now be so damn boring? Tell me this, because I don't know how. But this match should have been what a last man standing match with a rivalry so personal should be. A very violent, aggressive, and very fast-paced affair, where these two are wanting to kill each other. That's what I thought we were getting. That's what the build-up was doing in terms of tension, to escalate it into something much more than what we got. And that's not good, because much like their WrestleMania bout, we were treated to a slow-burning, methodical, and cumbersome bout that only benefited from minimal weapon usage and a story of resilience and knowledge of your opponents to exchange momentum and offense. That's not what I signed up for, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't. I know a lot of people are saying that it was a great, slow-burning, high-impact contest, but for me personally, that is not what I wanted. And I know that sounds like a fan thinking, oh, I have the right to get what I want from a wrestling show, but based on what the build-up was giving us, we should have seen much more weapon usage, brawling all over the place, showing that these guys really have vendettas to settle. What we got here was a one-on-one contest with a little tiny amount of outside brawling. You compare this last man standing feud ender to the potential feud ender between Ciampa and Gargano, and you can tell me that there is a massive difference. I know there's a massive difference, because that is where I thought this match would go. Not to the same lengths, of course, that would be absurd, but I expected Nakamura and Styles to forego the athleticism and the technical ability for one night and tear each other a new one. And the fact I didn't get that makes it really problematic, because that's not what a last man standing match should be. You look back at Jericho Triple H from Fully Loaded 2000. Now that is a last man standing match where technical aspects can be utilised, because there's storytelling and violence for body psychology and weapon usage and crowd reaction and brawling and all this stuff. It all came through together. Here, we got smidgens of that spread across a very wide canvas. That isn't there. And the fact that this is a feud ender meant that it didn't get the spectacle that I would have personally enjoyed from it. Because this match, just like the others they've had, was underbooked. And that's not a good thing. I wanted to see the charisma, the insanity of this kind of match, making Shinsuke do things he's never done before. He did some things on the apron and the stairs that made me happy, and that gave some intensity over time. And by the end of this contest, it had built up to where the crowd were anticipating it, but they were on their hands for half of it. The pace was slow. The storytelling was minimal until the end, when it started to really pile up some big match spots and some real good tests of fortitude. But that's not all I want. There's so many bits missing here. Even the fact that after 4 matches of being hit in the balls, AJ Styles didn't wear a cup. That you seriously should have done that, because it would have made for an awesome spectacle. Sure, he dodged out of one of the low blows, but you get my point here. The match under-delivered, much like the WrestleMania bout, but for almost the same or different reasons. The fact that these two didn't take risks a lot. The fact that these two did what a normal match between them would be without all of the intensity and the anticipation to create something more from it. And honestly, to show you how how bad this match did? Sure, 1 3/4 star isn't terrible. It wasn't a bad match, but it left such a sour taste in my mouth for not delivering what was advertised that I cannot be happy about it. It got a rating that I feel it doesn't deserve. It should have done worse. It did what it could to build up its blocks and achieve the rating that the other matches got, but the reason I'm so pissed off is that this was the biggest match on the evening for me. I was looking forward to this. My brother loves watching Shinsuke, as I do watching AJ Styles and the King of Strong Style. Do you know what happened in this contest? I nearly fell asleep. My brother did fall asleep. So, seriously? What the hell do I have more to say? This contest should not have made both of us pretty much go into comatose. This is a 30-minute contest, a feud ender, and yet I'm dozing off instead of being on the edge of my seat excited. That is not a good thing, people. And as a result, look at what I'm left with. A contest that did the minimum of its job and excited some people and myself into thinking it was okay. But I really wanted it to be a lot more than that. And thank you, WWE. Thank you for being the ones who underplayed and undersold what could have been a feud of the year if you actually got your fingers out of your ass and put these two on a level that they can actually reach. This pay-per-view feels like a New Japan event with all of these big matches being put back to back to back to back, while the lesser ones build up the anticipation. Well, seeing as I've been disappointed by one of the big contests on this card, I'm hoping the final two can make me smile a bit more, as Ronda Rousey faced off against the incumbent Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship, and, well, it didn't go the way I expected it to, because I predicted that Nia Jax would retain the title by DQ. Instead, it turned out to be the opposite, as Alexa Bliss came in, briefcase in hand, to assault both women, leading Ronda to win by DQ, losing me the prediction, and then she cashed in to win the championship, pinning the woman who took it from her at WrestleMania, while also setting up a feud for Ronda in the future. Oh my days. Raw could have something actually watchable for the next month or two. Awesome! And this contest, honestly, exceeded my expectations incredibly. A 2 3/4 star match out of Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax. I was not expecting this in a million years. Oh god, that sharp and take a breath was too much, because it shows how good this was. It was the wake-up call I needed from the prior contest, nearly putting me to sleep, as there was relentless, fast-paced action that was full of energy as Jax gave Rousey a hiding. And I don't mean a hiding of skinning proportions. I mean beating the crap out of it and then shooting it before then giving it a hiding. That's what that is. And inevitably, God, Rousey got thrown around like a rag doll, beaten within an inch of her life, and she sold it to perfection. Until she got offense and then no-sold it, but then the will, the fight, the incredible tenacity of a woman who knows how to hit a fast strike and wrap an arm lock into you. She fought back and looked amazing. She did a diving crossbody from the top rope, for God's sake, because every other move that Rousey did was something new I've not seen from her before, which means the move variety went up too. The storytelling was incredibly evocative, the crowd were right behind it, it was incredibly enthralling, and it went on longer than I was expecting because both women got offense. Most of it was Jax, but it swung enough times in Ronda's favour to make her look good. And it made Jax look like a monster for the first time in ages. Overall, this was unpredictable, which meant that having both women look strong and have the finish happen as it did meant that these two could both save face and neither of them loses momentum, which is why I went for the DQ finish in the first place, to set up narrative lines down the road for SummerSlam and Extreme Rules. But what we got instead here was a swerve, something that no one really predicted until you thought that Bliss doing so would have been a thing, and the fact that Styles and Nakamura didn't main event the show. But anyway, the fact is this contest did a lot better than I honestly expected, and okay, it wasn't the most amazing of technical, story-driven contests, but sometimes you don't need these. Sometimes you can just have something really enjoyable and plentiful without going crazy on the mat science. This did it, and I almost gave it 3 stars for what it was worth. If it was honestly a proper match with a proper finish, and a lot more going into the actual, I don't know, story of it all, you know, not just having them shake hands and go after each other with arm bars repeatedly. Basically, if Rousey had more of an eclectic moveset, and was able to build on the intensity of that, it could have worked out well. I mean, it already did anyway, but the fact is, if it wasn't for Alexa Bliss, this match may not have gone above 2.5 star. In fact, it may not have gone above 2.25, for all I'm saying. But honestly, it showed that in its limited but dramatic appeal, the best of Jax, the best of Rousey that's so far, and even better, through no work at all really, the best of Bliss as well. And okay, the match wasn't a spectacular success, it wasn't a 4-star contest by any means, but I still really enjoyed this for what it was worth, and to say that coming out of a match that I thought would stink up the joint, I can't really say that I'm more than surprised. This is ridiculous, and the crowd loved it, for the most part. So yeah, Ronda is still a success at the moment. Her matches have not fallen into negative territory. Move on Extreme Rules on SummerSlam and that may change, but for now, I'm excited to see where the Raw Women's division goes, because it's been shaken up, and I'm hoping it gets stirred into a concoction that is very, very satisfying. And we finally go into the main event, the eponymous Money in the Bank ladder match, Part 2, the second, the men's edition, as we saw Braun Strowman win the briefcase after 20 minutes of insanity that I gave 3 stars to. Now, the fact is, this contest, unlike the women's one, where physicality, storytelling and resourceful moves on ladders made it shine, the men's one focused on insane spots, generating a hot crowd reaction and throwing so much mayhem around that no one could look away from it, as it was frenetic and ridiculous in delivering all of its crazy, crazy things. Now, the story of Strowman being ganged up on, destroying all in sight from that, and then rising through the dogma of all these wrestlers to reach the top of the mountain like many believe he should be, was the underlying groundwork that ensured this match could run quite nicely. And there was a good amount of psychology backbone from that, being dogpiled under ladders, to breaking one as he stormed through, to throwing everybody around in sight. It was lovely. Rusev helped that with some really nice moves, including a triple accolade and a fall-away slam onto a ladder, which was so beautiful. Oh yes, it was. And well, I have to mention Strowman again, because he threw Kevin Owens off the top of the biggest damn ladder I've ever seen, through a table partition down below that looked like it actually could have properly hurt the man from Canada. And that was only the beginning, because it was, I've already mentioned it was frenetic, it was over the top insane, because every time you looked somewhere, a wrestler was flying in to do something. Whether it was a punch, a good grapple on and off the ladder, or just doing something to try and mix things up. Meaning that by the end of it, we weren't really sure if Strowman was even going to win it. And of course the coup de grace from the top of the ladder by Finn. He's done it before, but not from the outside in. That was something different and oh so beautiful. The fact is, this match was hard to keep track of at times, but that was to its benefit. There wasn't a lot of feud elements to work on here, so they had to really amp up the spot fest nature of what a ladder match is. And okay, the women didn't have to do that as much, but they at least did so with the guise of good moves. This didn't have as much as that, but at least made you really lurch forward on the edge of your seats wondering what the hell is going to happen here. Because this, ladies and gentlemen, is what some people believe all ladder matches should be. Crazy, over-the-top spot fests. And okay, it went shorter than I expected it to go, because I thought it was going to go near 30 minutes. Because these 8 men could have easily done more than what we gave here, which is why I've rated it a little lower than I expected, as well as the lack of storytelling, as I've mentioned, outside of what we have here. But the fact is, this clusterfuck was a very entertaining one, so where I just sat back and just lapped it all in. I didn't need to note down technical elements that made the crowd excited or made the pace work, because it was all doing that for me. It was simply executed in a way that just makes me happy. Because as a person who grew up watching spot fests on many WWE compilations and all that as I was young, to know that they can still just deliver something fun and escapist and crazy In this day and age where technical prowess and athleticism reigns supreme is joyous. And it made this pay-per-view end with a massive beaming positive. And it wasn't, okay, the biggest positive it could be, but I will say this. Both ladder matches delivered tonight. And I can't complain about that, can I? As I move forward into my final thoughts, believing that Strowman is going to be so fun to watch on Raw in the next 2 months. Bring it on, people, it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, let's look at this event in totality, shall we? It says a lot about a pay-per-view, that it can excite me and put me to sleep in the same damn evening. And this one surely did that. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad thing, as many of the matches more than lived up to their expectations and in some cases exceeded them, ensuring that there was consistent levels of quality for almost all of it. However, it is sad that on this, the first ever 4-hour non-Big Four extravaganza that WWE have put on for us, that there were some really poor showings, highlighting some ultimately unsatisfying underbooking, lack of creativity, and just overall a sense of lackluster performances. And for me personally, that's going to come over any show, especially one as bloated as this. But at the same time, there was enough quality to where I could sit up and be really enthused by it. And that's all I needed. Now, okay, the worst of Raw's feuds, and surprisingly the more bountiful offering and one of the worst on SmackDown's ends, didn't manage to give us all the excitement we could have wanted. But there was definitely more than enough here for you to say that you were entertained tonight. Okay, it wasn't as good as TakeOver Chicago 2. Nothing's going to top the insanity they put on. But the fact is that it still made me happy that I stayed up for 4 hours to watch it last night. It still gave me a sense of worth and good money for it. I felt that a lot of the big matches outside of one managed to do their job. We created some new stars, created some swerves around there, and had matches that made all combatants, for the most part, look good. And that's good, considering the storytelling on Raw and SmackDown has been lackluster in terms that it won't actually do that. So for the matches to do exactly that and more is a good thing. Spots in this pay-per-view will make you remember some of these wrestlers for a while, and that's a good thing. Now, could they have also done in executing this pay-per-view in terms of time better by utilising some more backstage segments and promos to ensure that the length of the matches wasn't so overbearing at times? Yeah, but that's something they can iron out in the next few shows, because these pay-per-views are long affairs. That doesn't mean all the matches have to be. So inevitably that's something they can tweak for the future to make some of them better over time. But honestly, what we have here was a very good showing that this elongated format does have something to do to really make it easier to sit through. But the matches we got here made up for all the issues it had quite well. It's not a barnstormer by all means, but it definitely is worth your time to sit through and check out some really nice contests. And that's all I can say, as overall, Money in the Bank 2018 scored a respectable 6.25 out of 10. I felt that I enjoyed this enough to say that it was worth my time in the evening watching a pay-per-view really late in the morning, but that's the good thing, because if I'm smiling coming out of a pay-per-view that put me to sleep, then I know it's done its job. Let's hope that Extreme Rules next month can build on this momentum, because Backlash left me in a very sorry state 6 weeks ago. So I'm hoping, with some stipulation matches and the craziness they can provide, everything will continue in good fervour. If not, however, and we enter SummerSlam with me with a massive frown, I'm not sure how things are going to go. And again, we'll judge it and see where it goes from there, right? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the Money in the Bank 2018 review is done. What did you all think about this show? Am I being a bit too enthusiastic? And was one or two of the matches better or worse than I've allocated? All you have to do to state your opinion is put them down there in the comment section, where I'll be glad to reply to them and see if there's some bountiful discussion to be found. And of course, if you do not want to miss the upcoming editions of Wrestling Rant, the new Friday Flashback, and of course, all the Pones content in the hiatus period for those of you who like wrestling and Pones in equal measure, then click the subscribe button down there, hit the like, and ensure that notification bell is hit so you do not miss a thing. I'm just hoping Raw and SmackDown improves in the next few weeks, because I haven't had the drive or desire to review them. So after this pay-per-view has thrown quite a few surprises my way, I hope they can, because then I can be excited and enthusiastic about something that I really, really love bringing in review form and analysis to you guys. So WWE, it's up to you, to build on all of this. If you don't, I'll be the first one to complain about it. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching the Spin the Money in the Bank review edition of Wrestling Rant for the CC Network, and I will see you all next time.